Hello, everyone, and inside today's Locked On Canadiens, we finally have a rough outline for a Ben Chiarot trade, more trade rumblings surrounding the Montreal Canadiens and the Minnesota Wild. We're going to preview the Tank Bowl Round 2 and talk about Auston Matthews' suspension, all coming up in this show.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 572 of Locked On Canadiens. As always, thank you for making us your first listen of the day every single day of the week. You can find us here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And today's show is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them Locked On sent you. I am one of your hosts. I am Scott Matla, and I'm joined, as always, by the active stick, Laura Seba. And Laura, we got news as we were sitting down to record the show. Not in the middle of the show, but before it for once, which means we can talk about things. We were going to talk about things anyways, but we can talk about things and how they affect the Montreal Canadiens now. How are we feeling on this Victory Monday here?
Well, it's not Canadiens news just yet, but it does affect the Canadiens in a very important way, and I'm excited. You know, it's still light out while we're recording the show. Like, the payoff for the daylight savings or whatever it is, where you have to wake up and you're in a whole like mental fog in the morning because it's so off your schedule. But the payoff is it's still light out and it's dinner time. So I don't know. I'm happy about that. And I'm happy that we have things to discuss because the Canadiens have kind of gone quiet on the Ben Chiarot front, but we do expect him to get traded unless they literally don't find a taker for him. But it looks like the market now has been set.
Yes. Just before we sat down to record, we were kind of discussing pre-show things, what we wanted to do and whatnot. And the Anaheim Ducks have traded Josh Manson to the Colorado Avalanche for prospect Drew Helleson and a third-round pick in 2023. I believe Drew Helleson was actually one of the bigger names that Colorado could move out in this current I don't want to call it market, but stage in their team, whatever we want to call it here. And my first thought is that is your rough outline for a Ben Chiarot trade. You're either going to get a first-round pick or you're going to get a good prospect in a lower-round pick. I think the ship has long sailed on getting both, unless teams are now more desperate. Now that Josh Manson is off the board, and we know Jakob Chychrun is injured right now, and we will touch on Jakob Chychrun's injury in our second segment for the Tank Bowl. I wonder now if this spurs more teams into going, well, Manson's gone. That leaves Chiarot. That might leave a Hampus Lindholm from Anaheim as well, and some of those other defensive names out there. And Ben Chiarot's been on this list basically since the Habs started losing in October. So I'm of two minds on this, in that I think it kind of spurs teams to potentially pay more and risk missing out, or this is the market, and that's what Kent Hughes is going to get now. You're going to get a prospect in a mid-round pick, or you're going to get a first and maybe like a tweener player. I feel like the market has been set for Ben Chiarot now.
We're like, as we're recording this, we're 1 week from the trade deadline. And there are 3 games left. So assuming that he doesn't get grievously injured, I don't know, I personally would hold him out of the lineup, but assuming he doesn't, lose an arm or something like that, he's still a big name on the trade market for the certain type of GM that wants a defensive defenseman that's going to, clear the crease of other people in the playoffs. That's definitely, there's still a market for that. And this might be one of the last few years that there is a market for that. And the Canadiens really need to be shopping him at this point, because you could lose him for nothing in free agency because I don't think he's coming back. Or you could get something for him at the trade deadline. So right now the trick is, I think, for Kent Hughes to kind of pretend that there's more bidding than there is. I feel like that's the kind of game that I would play if I were in Kent Hughes' shoes, especially now since one of the names is off the board. I personally feel like I would try and play that game, because I think the fact, like, the closer you get to the deadline, the fact that you might miss out on something, or even worse, that your opponent might be getting a kind of player that you want, it takes it from maybe I want him to know I need to get him at all costs. And I really like that craziness of the trade deadline. So, all of this could be moot. You could edit and post this episode, Scott, and then all of a sudden the Canadiens will have found a taker and traded Ben Chiarot.
No. Do not put that evil on me. I want to finish playing Halo Infinite tonight, and I don't want the Canadiens to ruin my evening by doing that.
Yeah. And I have another podcast to record. So once you're done listening to this, everybody, please check out the Habs Edition podcast, because after this, I will be recording with our friend Dylan Wall, and we will be talking about some really fun things for next season. But in the meantime, I really think that right now, if you're Kent Hughes, you got to pretend that everybody wants Ben Chiarot and everybody's willing to pay for Ben Chiarot. And he's a transparent guy. He likes to be honest. He wants to build a good rapport with his fellow GMs, but there's nothing wrong with embellishing a little bit, I think. And that's what I would do if I were in his shoes. Now, I'm not, so I don't know. Also, I have a really bad poker face. I can't pretend, when I'm playing that game, you could call my bluff very easily, but that's also why I'm not an NHL GM, right? So I think that's what they should do. And this is, for me, you're thinking about this guy's coming off the books at the end of the year. There's a difference between an asset in any form and a nothing. And an asset in any form is better. But obviously, we think that based on how big a name he is on the market, and we don't really understand why, we do think that they should drum up the return. They should drum up the price for him so the Canadiens can get a decent return.
And Chiarot isn't the only name. Elliot Friedman, this was posted by Montreal Hockey Now on Twitter, scrolling through today. The Canadiens have interest again in Jack McBain, a Minnesota Wild prospect. He's graduating from Boston College, 22-year-old center. He has 33 points in 24 games this year, 86 points in 117 games overall. Apparently, Minnesota's been asking roughly a second-round pick, and if the Canadiens really want a guy like Jack McBain, I think they might pay that. The price might come down the further into this goes, because if he's not going to sign with the Wild, guess what? He's going to be a free agent. The Habs are going to get him for literally nothing. And also that the Canadiens have apparently kicked tires on Pavel Zacha of the New Jersey Devils. Zacha was he was a top 6 overall pick there. I look at his numbers, and I don't know if it's just the Devils being bad or what it is, but it's the kind of thing that I go, this is wanting an NHL center more than anything else right now, because they're lacking in those. And Zacha's not great, but the other option is we're playing Laurent Dauphin as a 2C. It all credit to Larry Dolphins, but winning teams don't have Laurent Dauphin as a 2C. Winning AHL teams might, but winning NHL teams do not for very long. So there's lots of trade rumor stuff going out around there. So we'll see.
Got to wonder, though, that you look at the Canadiens' injuries and the rumors kind of materialize out of that more than anything else. And maybe they haven't even inquired on him, but somebody was like, oh, the Canadiens should be interested in Pavel Zacha. And so it became a whole thing. So you kind of have to wonder with that, because at this point, why it doesn't make sense to me why you would try to get it if you're not trying to make the playoffs. You have no hope of making the playoffs. Why are you trying to do this? I mean, it's a lot of pressure on your younger centers who aren't, 2C caliber. But other than that, I really don't see a reason to give up an asset for him in particular.
Buying doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you're the Montreal Canadiens right now. I mean, maybe buying for the future, like a McBain, I understand. A Zacha, I do not, unless they are continuing to try and compete in Tank Bowl 2022. And speaking of which, Tuesday, when you were listening to this, it's Coyotes versus Habs, the movable object versus the stoppable force. And we have that preview coming up next. But folks, it is that time of year again, as the March Madness college basketball tournament is finally upon us. And if you want all the latest odds, contests, and player props, betonline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and info. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. And folks, if you are tuning into this, we want to make sure that on trade deadline day, March 21st at 3:30, tune into Locked On Fantasy Hockey's live deadline reaction show to get all the on-ice fantasy and betting analysis you need from the hosts Steele Roden and Flip Livingstone, with appearances from everyone around the Locked On NHL a circle there. Please take a look, check them out. It's going to be well worth your time. Things that may or may not be worth your time. The Montreal Canadiens played the Arizona Coyotes tonight. And the last time these two teams played, the Canadiens, to phrase this in the nicest way possible under Dominique Ducharme, went out and pooped their pants on the ice for 60 minutes and lost in an embarrassing fashion to a team that is deliberately bad this season. It was... We talked about low points, and this was another low point before the next low point before the next low point. I feel a little bit better about this game because, surprisingly, the Coyotes and Habs are playing extremely good hockey right now. They're getting really good goaltending. They're getting really fun performances. This game might actually be fun, and it's got some meaning. These teams are at the bottom of the standings. The Habs have a game or have played one more game than the Coyotes. So if anything screams going to overtime because neither team wants to win, it's definitely this game. So I'm cautiously excited about a Habs Coyotes game, something I don't think I've ever been before in my entire life.
I think there's two things at play here. You could see both teams trying to lose or both teams trying to win. And I hope both teams try to win because the Coyotes, as you mentioned, the last few games, I guess it's been a couple of weeks now, they're pretty hot right now. I think that's, they're definitely like they're playing exciting hockey. It might not be beautiful, elite talent, but a lot of guys are playing well because they want to get traded. And a lot of guys are playing for pride, and I think the Canadiens kind of have that as well. They're trying to salvage the bad sentiment from having such an abysmal season. So I'd like to think that both teams will be trying. Both teams will be, they'll have a game plan, they'll have effort, they'll have execution, and it might be one of those games that's really messy but fun for the fans to watch. I think for me, for the rest of this season, I want to see fun. I want to see the Cole Caulfield continue to be amazing, Nick Suzuki, that kind of thing. Yes, I want to see that. I want to see some players recover their games from earlier in the season. But at the end of the day, I just want to see some fun hockey because we all know that right now we're looking forward to the lottery. We're looking forward to the Canadiens amassing draft picks. And that's what I want to see.
And I look at this game as that it's going to be wide open. I don't think there's going to be much defense played in this game, to be honest. And I'm assuming we're going to see Carl Vejmelka and we're going to see maybe Samuel Montembeault again. I don't expect this to be the prettiest game. I really don't. But at the same time, these two teams, if you combine their points, still would not be in first place in the NHL. So they're not good. But at the same time, you know what? That's all okay. Like you said, it's about building these next things here. And I'm curious what they do because there's still no Christian Dvorak. There's still no Jonathan Drouin. Joel Edmondson may or may not play. We don't quite know yet. And also, apparently, the Canadiens had Louis Belpedio recalled when they brought Corey Schooneman up to the team the other day. I don't know if Belpedio just went from Wilkes-Barre Scranton to Philadelphia because the Rocket were in Pennsylvania that weekend, but there's no trace of a recall or anything there. So something is up. And I'm wondering, with Belpedio being with the team, if they're going to scratch Ben Chiarot to keep him now, especially with the Josh Manson trade here. I wonder if Belpedio is that emergency thing where they go, just in case he's with the team, but he's not with the team. So, which I think is super illegal, but I'm not a capologist. And I trust John Sedgwick's judgment on this because he's been doing it for 2 years. So I wouldn't be shocked if Ben Chiarot's not in the lineup against Arizona, to be quite honest. It's a week to the trade deadline. He's their most valuable asset. He's got 9 points in 10 games, had that great assist at Kyle Dubas against Philadelphia to get it to overtime. We're going to see a lot of weird stuff for the next week for the Montreal Canadiens, and that's not a bad thing. I'm wondering if they take this moment, though, because Arizona, obviously, they might be a good team right now, but they're not a good team overall, if that makes sense. I wonder if this is a game where they go, hey, maybe we should give Caden Primo a start here and see what we've got. Because Andrew Hammond's not cleared. Jake Allen isn't cleared yet. Carey Price has just started practicing again. You don't want to burn Montembeault out because then you start getting blown out in games, and we know how that goes. And Martin St. Louis coaching can't fix goaltending, at least not right now. So I wonder if there's going to be more surprising lineup choices because I really do half expect there to be a recall notice about Louis Belpedio sometime in the afternoon tomorrow. And then we find out Ben Chiarot is a healthy scratch for the game or something along those lines.
That would make a lot of sense to me. And as for the starting goaltender, I wonder if they're just worried about the fragile mental state of Caden Primo. He seems to be, it's felt to me over the course of the last couple of seasons is that he'll play in the AHL, he'll get some confidence, he'll play in the NHL, and then not be great, and then lose confidence, and then start declining in the NHL instead of getting better, which is what you want to see from a call-up. And so the opposite keeps happening. So I wonder if they're just worried that he's too fragile, and that's why they didn't play him against the Flyers, because there's that whole history there and all of that. They didn't want to put too much pressure on his shoulders. But I really think that it's time to start him, if only to give Montembeault a break. If only you're all right, let's give away these points to the Arizona Coyotes because Montembeault needs a break.
Yeah, and I don't actually know what the rest of their schedule. Admittedly, I haven't looked at the Habs schedule. They play the Stars on Thursday, and they play the Senators on Saturday, and then the Bruins on trade deadline day. They've got, out of those 4 games, there are 2 that are very winnable. Arizona and the Senators games are both very winnable. The Stars game is a toss-up because they beat the Stars that required Samuel Montembeault to be legitimately incredible, and the Bruins game might be an absolute pummeling for all we know. So I think they should try and go for the wins in the games that they can there. I would start Caden Primo against the Coyotes and then give Montembeault the Stars and the Senators games. Get your points and your confidence boosters where you can get them. And at the same time, you can still rest, Caden Primo and play him when it's needed. It's not like Samuel Montembeault is getting burnt out, but we do run the risk of that. And hopefully Andrew Hammond's back before too long, or Jake Allen is back, because he's supposed to be in that 8-week window soon. We might get a surprise going into the weekend, which would be welcome, not only for the Laval Rocket to get Caden Primo back, but for Samuel Montembeault, who might just give Jake Allen a hug and say, I've missed you so much, please make all the shots stop. So it's going to be a very wild and interesting week in Montreal. Laura, do you have any game predictions for Arizona and Montreal?
I predict that the Canadiens will end up still in last place after all of it.
Yeah. All right. I was going to say that no matter what, win or lose, they're going to still be in last place anyway. So it's all right.
You saw what I did there.
Yes. If you can see my brain short circuiting as I was trying to do the math in my head. So
you picked up what I put down.
Yes. And there you have it, folks. The Habs probably still in last place when we record on Wednesday. And now in our final segment, Auston Matthews has been suspended for 2 games for a cross-check to Rasmus Dahlin. We're going to talk whether that's fair, whether the Department of Player Safety actually has its act together, and whether the reaction is warranted, and that's all coming up next. But first, today's show is, of course, brought to you by Rock Auto, and there's so many makes and models of cars, it's almost impossible to get what you need all the time from your local chain parts store. And it's often intimidating where they go in. Is your model an EX? Is it an LS? Is it, whatever? Save time and money when you go to rockauto.com, and you can save 30, 50, and even 100% more compared to your chain store or car dealership. And Rock Auto is a family business, and they've been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. The prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything that you need. Do you need tail lamps? Do you need motor oil? New carpet for your car? Anything that you could possibly be looking for. And we encourage everyone to go discover what you need for your car at rockauto.com and how it can help you out at any circumstance. So go explore their easy-to-use website and find the solution to your auto parts needs. And when you go to rockauto.com and see all the parts available, right, Locked On in there, how did you hear about us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need, rockauto.com. So I just got a text message from my co-host here, and Jakob Chychrun suffered a lower body injury Saturday night versus the Boston Bruins, who will be out of the lineup for 2 to 4 weeks. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Chiarot is now the hottest free agent on the market. Who wants Ben Chiarot? I can tell you who doesn't want Ben. I can tell you who probably might want him. The Toronto Maple Leafs, who, after complaining about cross-checking for 2 years, had Auston Matthews suspended 2 games for cross-checking Rasmus Dahlin in the neck. And I'm gonna level with our Leaf fans who might listen to this show. Yes, Auston Matthews puts up with an incredible amount of crap on the ice. So does Connor McDavid. And should there be more calls? Yes. Should you cross-check a man in the neck because you are frustrated and get suspended for 2 games when your team is spiraling right now because you can't get a save and nothing seems to be working? No, that's not what an on-ice leader does. It's a very poor reaction to things. And here's the thing. If you didn't think Auston Matthews had a target on his back beforehand when Toronto and all that has called out the officiating for 2 years, he certainly does now, because he mouthed off to the ref after they lost to Arizona. And then at the end of that Sabres game, his cross-check was arguably more egregious than the one that got Jonathan Drouin thrown out of the Dallas Stars game a couple of weeks ago. And he got a 2-minute minor, came back in the game, got run over by Dylan Cousins, and then it was not a good day to be Auston Matthews in Hamilton. And at the same time, I look at that and go, that's a cross-check. If that is the standard, which it should be, cross-checking a dude in the neck should be a minimum suspension there. It's the right call, and it sends a message. Auston Matthews is a Hart candidate this year. He's a legitimate superstar, and he just got suspended for his actions. There is your standard now. However, and Laura, I am probably stupid, I don't think the Department of Player Safety is going to stick to that, to be quite honest.
No, that was the first thing I was going to say. Well, actually, let me go back to the actual first thing I was going to say, which was, doesn't matter how frustrated you are. You cannot lose your temper like that. We've seen it happen to Brendan Gallagher a lot, where he stays inside the line and then people start annoying him and getting back at him for being annoying. And then he loses his temper. So like this entire game where he spent like literally staying right inside the line and not getting into trouble, that he loses his temper, and you cannot do that. You just can't. The same thing with Auston Matthews. While your anger might be valid, you cannot lose your temper and then cross-check a dude in the neck or the face or whatever. Now, 100%, this is happening, and then the NHL is going to go back to pretending they don't see cross-checks anymore, literally the next game, which is happening right now. We're in like 10 minutes. So it's literally like they're going to stop. Like, if they called enough penalties on cross-checking, I think we'd see it a lot less often. But you're right. When it's like in somebody's neck or face where you could cause significant injury, like really that should be a suspension. And we know it's not going to happen. And what's going to happen is that all the Leafs fans who think that there is a conspiracy against Auston Matthews are going to get even more empowered. And then you're going to get people saying that it's all against the Leafs, where really it's just incompetence and inconsistency. And then like other teams are going to see like, oh, you know what? Auston Matthews got called. And then whoever does the cross-check today or tomorrow doesn't get called, doesn't get a suspension. So they're going to start cross-checking all over again. It's not going to be a deterrent. You need to be consistent. Like if I'm Auston Matthews, I'm understandably angry if I'm the first person, or if this is the first time this happens. Like in general, they need to be much harder on cross-checking, particularly in the playoffs. You know what I found really funny was that, you know, everybody was holding up examples of other people that have done things that look almost exactly the same as what Auston Matthews did, and they didn't get suspended for it. Like, it really is clearly an inconsistency. But what Auston Matthews did was, 1, be a superstar, 2, do it in a big outdoor game.
And that's
those
exactly
two things.
Two wrongs don't make a right. Two wrongs don't make a right. And that's the thing
exactly.
Yes, the standard sucks because it's inconsistent, but at the same time, if all those things probably should have been suspensions or fines and this and that. At the same time, he did it, like you said, with the entire hockey world watching that game there. It's Toronto, and as much as we like to make fun of how does this affect the Leafs in Toronto and this and that, everyone was watching it because Toronto's an absolute tire fire right now. It's hilarious to watch them fail, and then they failed and watch their superstar get suspended for 2 games. And here's the thing, he's going to come back and score 7 million goals in like 3 games, and we will deal with that bridge when we cross it. But the standard sucks. And I agree that yes, there should be more suspensions for cross-checking and actually cracking down. Not saying you're going to do it and then changing your mind halfway through, but I've seen some people say that a suspension was unwarranted. He cross-checked a dude in the neck in retaliation. The oldest rule in any sport is they always get the guy who's retaliating. Always.
Right. It doesn't matter what sport. It doesn't matter which player you are.
And if you don't think he had a target on his back for yelling at the refs and that gets around, I don't know what to tell you there. He's probably lucky he only got a 2-minute penalty for that. because people point out the Drouin one. Jonathan Drouin got 5 in a game for that penalty against Tyler Seguin, and he was cross-checked first as well. Rasmus Dahlin did shove Matthews into the bar and started the whole kerfuffle, but Matthews is the one who cross-checked him in the neck. And simple as that. It's there's no.
You got to at least make it believable that it was accidental or you intended it to be clean and it crossed the line a little bit. You can't be a superstar doing these things, and you can't be doing this to a superstar. Like, if you're an inconsequential player doing it to an inconsequential player, most of the time that gets overlooked. But Auston Matthews is not inconsequential, and neither is Rasmus Dahlin.
It's not a conspiracy against the Leafs. The officiating just sucks across the board. It's as simple as that. So that's my spiel on that. I am basking in some of the reactions to this because I'm a terrible garbage human being who enjoys the suffering of others sometimes. But
I'm sorry. It doesn't matter what kind of hockey fan you are. The Leafs imploding is funny. It just is. And I'm tired of pretending that I haven't enjoyed it my entire life.
To quote the worst person on Twitter, this is tremendous content. So, and speaking of tremendous content, you can find us wherever you listen to your daily podcast, folks. We can be your first listen every day or your first watch. Subscribe here on YouTube. We are trying to get to 500 subscribers and then 1,000 subscribers. We make those YouTube dollar bills. It is fantastic. Thank you so much for all of your support already. You can follow us on Twitter at @LO_Canadiens. You can follow Laura at The Active Stick, and you can follow myself at Scott Matla. And when you're done listening to us, please check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey, where the hosts have everything you need to help rule your fantasy hockey league. We will see you all after the Arizona game.